It's time to sit back, relax, and listen to Conversations with Joan. Conversations with Joan will inspire, motivate, and empower you. Live your best life now. Listen, learn, think, and decide. And now, here's your host, Joan Herman.
Welcome to Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life, Conversations with Joan. I'm Joan Herman. Thanks for tuning in. Conversations with Joan focuses on topics that are important to your life, from health and wellness to professional development to personal well-being. Change makers join me to share their insights, tips, and strategies so you can thrive and live your best life now. Thank you for taking time for yourself, and thank you for letting us be a part of your life. Now, let's start talking. Anxieties are hitting epidemic levels in the United States. According to the Anxiety and Depression Association of America, 40 million American adults suffer from an anxiety disorder every year. Today's guest, Dr. Robert London, offers a therapy that he says helps overcome anxiety as well as phobias, PTSD, and insomnia with less or no medications and far less therapy sessions. His three-step method is designed to empower people to help themselves. Dr. London is a psychiatrist, educator, and writer. He is founder and former head of the short-term psychotherapy unit at NYU Langone Medical Center. Dr. London's new book is Find Freedom Fast, Short-Term Therapy That Works. Welcome, Dr. London. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me. Thank you very much.
So, Doctor, anxieties are hitting epidemic levels. Why do you believe that this is the case?
Well, I think we live in a very complicated society. Sometimes social issues can get you anxious. There are family issues growing up that can create anxiety. And then when you get faced with a anxiety-provoking situation, it can be even worse. I think there's some hereditary connection to anxiety. And when you put it all together, we're faced with a lot of complicated issues. And there's a lot of instability, whether it's social instability, family instability, work instability. And it percolates up and it causes all kinds of difficulties for people in terms of their functioning. And for some people who are motivated for change, change is a very elusive concept. To try and move from one attitude or one concept of change to another, they can benefit from short-term treatment strategies that, although not for everybody, for far more people, could focus on what specifically is causing their anxiety, and they can try and move to get a new perspective on the old set of problems. And if they're motivated and thoughtful enough to get a new perspective on the old set of problems, sometimes the anxiety can be controlled or even removed.
Doctor, let's talk a little bit about your three-step approach that empowers people. The first thing that you say we must do is to focus on the problem. What does that mean?
Well, I think you have a specific anxiety problem or a phobic problem, and you I use the learning, philosophize, and action technique. It's my spin on CBT, cognitive behavior therapy. And you try and learn how you arrived at this anxiety or phobic situation. And then if you try and learn about it, you try and philosophize a little bit on how it's affected all your life and kind of moved in so many different areas. And it may have basically held you back and you need to make some change. And then you go into an action mode. I remember a man who was terribly anxious and phobic about dogs, and he was just fine. He was crossing the street if he saw someone walking a dog. But then he was going to visit an old college roommate for a weekend away and discovered this college roommate had the dog. So he was terrified. How was he going to, he was kind of caught between these two problems. He wants to go see this friend of his. On the other hand, the friend's got a dog. So he came in to cope with the phobia and to cope with the anxiety that was built up in him. And we went through a strategy where we talked about, let's buy a good dog book. We talked about how he learned about this. His mother and his grandmother, who he grew up with, basically did not like dogs. Now, that was their choice. However, it turned out with him that he took it a step further, maybe more than one step further, and became phobic of dogs. So the mother and the grandmother were not bad. They brought him up well. He was well educated. He was treated well. So he had no desire, nor did I, for him to be angry at them. But the point is, this is how, so he philosophized it, and here it was affecting his life where he couldn't go visit his friend. So we got him to buy some dog books. He was very anxious looking at these pictures. For me, they were beautiful pictures of different dog breeds. And he sort of, over a period of a week or 10 days or 2 weeks, he got comfortable turning the pages of the book. Then we worked on a situation where he knew someone, and knew a few people actually, who had dogs, and he picked one who he really trusted, a neighbor and a friend, and we had him desensitize himself from the dog. And how you do this, and this is critical, because there's so much trust in the friend, you have the friend take the dog out on a leash, and he would approach the dog at his pace. Never would the dog approach him. And this is a very crucial thing, so there's no fear of anything unexpected. He is in total control of this desensitization process. And over a period of a number of weeks, he moved closer and closer to the dog with a trusted friend, and eventually he patted the dog. I would say he was probably 85 to 90% cured of this issue, and the end result was he ended up visiting up his friend. He had motivation. This was a key kind of thing. He really wanted to get beyond this. He knew how it worked. He learned how it worked. He philosophized about it, and he went into the world of action using learning, philosophize, and action. And this is how it works. There's another. There are many situations. What comes to mind, I think of many times women who get pregnant do not have an easy time in the workplace. I remember one particular person who was a hostess in a restaurant, and there were other people who would love her job. She was pregnant with her first baby, and she needed to take off. She was really worried she would not have a job because the job wasn't a tenure job. She didn't have much job security, even though she had been being the hostess in a very busy restaurant for a number of years. So with her, I taught her some relaxation exercises to relax her anxiety, to calm down, and just focus on the baby, because the anxiety not only was disturbing her, what's going on in her body is going to cross into the fetus, and then the fetus could end up having anxiety issues down the road. So basically, she did relax. She did calm down and focus on how much joy she would have. She changed her attitude. She changed her perspective on how much joy she would have in the new child. Incidentally, with no help from me, she went out to dinner one night at a restaurant with her husband, and the people knew her from where she had worked, and she was offered a better job when she came back to work, which she ended up taking. The outcome was really very good. I think of another woman who was a partner in a very strong, powerful law firm, and she was totally anxiety-ridden because of the negativity coming from the male partners. Even though these male partners had families and had kids, that they'd have to pick up her work when she was out for either 12, 16, or 20 weeks after she gave birth. And even though she's like super bright, super educated, an attorney, the anxiety was overwhelming. And she was now thinking that maybe she was abandoning her career, she was abandoning these people, men, and we treated that anxiety with a lot of relaxation exercises, had her imagine a great big movie screen, seeing pleasant experiences on that screen, and get a new perspective on things that before she had the baby, start to focus on some of the men who were incredibly supportive in that law firm. And it's interesting, we had this super intelligent person, this super educated person, and she didn't quite think about that. That opened up a whole new perspective because she found men in the place who thought it was great that she was going to have her first child. And that experience, through short-term treatment strategies, through short-term therapy, changed everything.
So, Doctor, through the examples that you just provided, we can see your process, which is focus on the problem, challenge the thinking that led to the problem, and then to replace the old behaviors and habits with new ones. When we're in that state of anxiety and we're anxious about whatever, the type of situations you just described, we tend to think that undoing the old emotional patterns is impossible. Why do we feel that way? Why do we think we can't do it?
I think that's a great question. I think it's a really great question. I think we get wired into something that's repetitive. We don't have an elucidated brain chemistry and the neurological connections very well. We're still working at understanding it. But the best way to look at it is how we get wired through chemistry and neurological connections to think a certain way. And that becomes circuitous in that it keeps reoccurring, and we cannot shake it. However, the whole idea of finding a route to alter that works. And if you can find that route and it starts working for you 8 or 9 or 10 times, it can become part of your behavior. One of the things I like to do, to be more specific, is I would teach someone how to go into a relaxed state. And in a relaxed, and that's easy. About 80% of the population can do that. Some people will say they get relaxation when they do yoga. Some call it meditation. Some call it hypnosis. We now have a new word out there called mindfulness. I think all these things are very, very similar with different ceremonies to develop the same concept. So I would teach someone how to do this. It takes 3 to 4 to 5 minutes. It doesn't take 20 visits. If you have that capacity to shift gears, and many people do. We see athletes, we see Hollywood stars assume a role. Athletes can do enormous feats when they get into what we used to call in the 80s and 90s, the zone. And then I have someone look at a great screen, and sometimes I have them put a thick line right down the center, and I'll say, look, slowly put some of the things you're concerned about, or the specific thing you're concerned about, or 2 things you're concerned about on the left side of that screen. And this could take an hour and a half. Then I suggest looking at the blank side of the right screen and imagine a very, very pleasant experience. Anything you want. It's none of my business what you're thinking about. And what happens is, as a person learns how to do this, and we practice, and we get a sort of like homework to do this 5 or 6 times a day before the next visit. And we go through this scenario. The person learns how to relax, because most often anxiety is incompatible with feeling calm. So what happens is the right side of the screen, where you're projecting something very nice, will actually overwhelm the left side of the screen with anxiety. Doesn't happen the first time. Doesn't happen so quickly on the second time. By the 5th or 6th time you're practicing this, you're actually able to see pleasantness much more easily. And the anxiety is incompatible. And this was shown many years ago in the late 40s by a great psychiatrist, Dr. Wolpe, who showed that anxiety is incompatible with the pleasantness. And that's one of the ways to get rid of it. And the new behavior becomes part and parcel of who you are. You sort of get a new set of wiring. Is it going to work for every single person? Probably not. But it certainly could work for a lot more people who are suffering from this kind of problem.
Doctor, can hypnotherapy help with mental health issues? And if so, why?
It can help with some issues. There are mental health issues that need medication management, and I'm fine with that. There are mental health issues that need long-term care, and I'm fine with that. Just like in any field of medicine, we have people who come in for a sore shoulder, they get the shoulder fixed. We have people come in for a sore shoulder and something else is ongoing and they need longer-term care. There's a piece of dirt in someone's eye that comes out quickly, and there's eye disease that needs ongoing follow-up. And the same thing in mental health. With hypnosis is not magic, it's not sleep. It's focused concentration at the expense of the periphery. And if someone is in that relaxed hypnotic state, they can develop new thoughts and new ideas. When you're in this relaxed state and focused, you can get new ideas to generate in your mind, and you can supply new ideas. For example, in the smoking strategy, we realize that a person needs respect and protection for their body. We link the respect and protection for the body, which is the vehicle that expresses your life, with the smoking. So the person has a choice. Most people pick respect and protection for their body as opposed to smoking, and it was a good strategy. Is it for everybody? No, but it certainly works for some people who are motivated and want to find a short-term solution to the problem. So the hypnotic model works. It works for teaching strategies for insomnia, and many people find it very successful. The American Academy of Physicians, which takes in all the primary care doctors in the country, said in 2017 in a notice that cognitive behavior therapy is the first choice for treating insomnia as opposed to running to the pills right away. So basically, I'm offering an idea of short-term strategies, just like anybody in the medical field would go for something short-term first if they can fix it, and then go to long-term as a secondary approach. And in some cases, of course, medications are definitely needed. So I hope I've explained the hypnosis to you, but it's not hocus pocus. It's not magic. And it seems to me, and from people who've studied this for 200 years, that when, for example, an athlete jumps 5 feet in the air and they're in the zone, they're almost in that trance-like state. Sometimes when a student is studying for an exam and they don't hear the doorbell ring, they're almost in that relaxed trance-like hypnotic state. So now we can use this human capacity to teach people how to get rid of certain problems. But hypnosis per se, hypnotherapy per se, it's a nice word, but it needs to be connected to a strategy. And like I say, there was the strategy for smoking cessation. We can use this strategy for anxiety, where I discussed previously, having someone in a relaxed or hypnotic state and using a split screen to see the anxiety on one side. You do this very slowly because you don't want to make someone anxious while you're doing the process. You start off with very simple things and then linking it to pleasant experiences. And that's all part of focused concentration, which is what hypnosis actually is. And it does work. And of course, it works even better when you teach someone how to do it, because basically it's not the operator doing it, it's the person's own capacity. And I think it's always important to know with the hypnosis model, it's a person's capacity to shift gears.
Doctor, with the understanding that there is a time and certain conditions that require medication without a doubt, do you think that we are over-medicating people? It seems like that is the first line of treatment when there are so many other things that can be explored.
Well, my experience is there's too much over-medication in the mental health field. Doesn't mean anyone should stop taking what they need, but there's it seems to be that much of the psych care has gotten into shorter visits, 15, 20-minute visits. And there's a lot of mixing and matching of medication, and there's use of medication for its side effects as opposed to the actual reason the medication is there. And just in my experience over 40 years, and even especially in the last 10 or 15 years, there is too much medication being used. And it needs to be thought out more clearly in terms of what works. And sometimes what happens is someone is taking 1 or 2 medications, they're not working. So a third one is added, and sometimes a fourth medication is added. And number 1 and number 2, which hasn't worked, hasn't been taken down, hasn't been taken away. So now we have 2 that have shown they don't work. We've added 2 more, and there's 4. And of course, then you have the problem of potential side effects. And then you have the problem of someone goes to another specialty and gets another set of medications from their primary care doctor or whoever they're going to go see. And yes, indeed, there is an overuse of medication without question. Medications work. They're life-saving, whether they're for infectious disease or whether they're for diabetes or high blood pressure or mental health reasons. Certainly the 50s and the 60s and the 70s in the world of mental health have produced some very good medications that are life-saving, but your point is very well taken. There is overuse of medications today.
The book is Find Freedom Fast, Short-Term Therapy That Works. If you'd like to get more information about the book or Dr. London and his work, you can visit the websites findfreedomfast.com or drrobertlondon.com. That's drrobertlondon.com. Doctor, thank you so much for joining us and for explaining ways that we can empower ourselves to combat certain mental health issues. This is important, life-changing information, so thank you for spending time with us.
Thank you very much for the time. Your questions were great. So you made me think, and I hope I gave you some good answers.
This is Conversations with Joan. Stay with us. We'll be right back.